I'm Ari Mason. I'm a vocal soloist and viola da gamba player for film, TV, and video games, as well as a producer of my own albums for over a decade. I am so excited to introduce Fever Dreams, my vocal sample library, and share it with all of you. The human voice is incredibly versatile and rich, and I find there are endless ways to use it on composers' scores. Fever Dreams contains over 100 triple-tracked, pitched, unpitched, rhythmic, sustained patches of extended vocal techniques, chants, whispers, breaths, calls, vocal percussion, and vocal textures. I hope you enjoy working with this unique library in your own compositions. Let's take a look at the features and functionality of Fever Dreams with Grammy-winning composer and my favorite collaborator, Stephanie Economou.
Let's dive into Fever Dreams. I want to first highlight how beautiful this user interface is. It's the most beautiful user interface I have ever seen in my life, and designed by the incredible Ari Mason, who is a multi-hyphenate. So let's talk a little bit about the features that we have here. The wonderful thing about Fever Dreams is that you can have two different sounds loaded into this instrument at once. That's source A and source B. And you can change what those sources are by coming into the browser here. There are some great categories, and it's laid out in a really, sensible way. But we'll get back into that in just a moment. Let's take a look at some of the buttons and bells and whistles. So you have some pretty simple envelope knobs here. You have volume, you have attack and release. You have key map shift, which is essentially going to move the location of that instrument in particular. So that's really nice if you want to have independence between your two sources. If you're using them both at the same time, maybe that's more playable for you. Or if you want to overlap the instruments together, sometimes there are some really fun things that happen when they're overlapping at the same time, which we'll demonstrate shortly. Speed. This is a really cool function that I find myself using quite a bit. So speed 1 is the speed that you recorded it at,
That's
correct?
Right, yep. Mm-hmm.
But you can also do it halftime. You can do it at 3/4. You could do it at 1.5 to give you some really fun syncopated relationships, and you can do it double time. I really like experimenting with, having two sources and having them at different speeds. There's some really fun, unexpected things that happen when you do that. Then there's a toggle here for mod and velocity. This instrument by default is going to be set to mod, and mod is what's going to control the intensity right here. So I have my fader for modulation, and that's going to control the intensity of the sound. If that's not the way that you love to program stuff, this mod velocity switch allows you to change where the velocity controls the intensity if you flick that just to the velocity, and it is adjusted per your touch on the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to have mod be on a fader because that's just how I like to program things. I use my volume and my mod together, and that's how I kind of get the performance that I want. You have a slider for reverb, which is obviously going to give you the space that you want. I am usually a fan, especially with a library that is so well sampled like this, to just pull that knob straight down. I really like some dry, crisp sounds, but sometimes for more of the ethereal patches and the textural elements, you might want to add a little bit of space there or add your own space, whatever your preference is. Now, voice blend is essentially a crossfade. So you're dealing with two different sources here, and you might want to play around with moving that and leaning into source A and sometimes leaning into source B. So what I like to do is to right click on this, and I'll have it learn CC data from one of my faders. For example, I'm just going to set this to expression, but you can set it to whatever you prefer. And now I'm able to just program that crossfade if I so desire to. So we're going to demonstrate for you some of the patches in the library. So as you can see, there are categories: calls of the wild, breaths and whispers, sustained and tremolo, chants and hums. So we're just going to start at the top here in calls of the wild with clicking rhythms. So starting with calls of the wild, what was the inspiration to create sounds from the wild?
Well, as a kid, I really liked the Planet Earth series, and in Papua New Guinea, there are these birds called birds of paradise, and they make these really interesting mating calls that I don't think exist anywhere else. And I thought, what would these birds sound like if they had human vocal cords? And I ended up singing on Planet Earth 3 recently, so...
Dreams do come true.
They do.
Okay, well, starting with the clicking rhythms here. Some of these sounds could sound really cool together. They could be great with some of the other instruments available in the library, which we'll get to later, that you can blend these sources with. So here's what comes after clicking rhythms. Rainforest Ritual Major Third. That's a really great one. I love the expression in that.
We also have, I've looped these also, so you can have, why don't you demonstrate, Steph?
Sure. So that's, yeah, that's just the major third patch. As you just, now this is the major third loop. So it's looping onto itself, essentially. And then there's also the minor third version.
Yes.
I'm a really big fan of putting all of these in really close voicings or using them pentatonically. Just go wild, but on their own. And make it bone dry. All of these things are multi-tracked as well, so even though sometimes it's nice to have a vocal soloist, it really does give this sense of having scope and space, and it has the capability of being quite cinematic but also quite intimate, which I really love.
It's a little chorus of me.
It is a tiny chorus of Ari Mason, and people pay a lot of money for that, okay? That's all I gotta say. And we're gonna move to the minor third that is looped, like the major third patch. I adore that. All right, so next we have Spring Break Woo A.
Any Arrested Development fans out there?
Of course, but of course.
So these are the calls, and we're about to hear the response in Spring Break Woo B. Then we'll hear the combo after that.
Here's that combo. Fantastic. Whoops and Shouts A. And then we have B. You're a one-woman ambulance, really, in some ways. It's very impressive. And then we go to the monkeys, which I'm a big fan of.
And I'm less of a fan of for some reason.
Well, I think composers would really enjoy this.
They might.
And then we'll just show you a sampling of a couple of the other guys, a couple of the other monkeys. I love all the glides. There's something so human about this. It's very natural. Some of them are quite guttural, and I just love tossing a bunch of plugs on it. I love putting a bunch of effects on it. I love pitching it down. This is the most pure form of what these sounds are, and it has an organic source. And I think as a composer, that's what I'm always striving for, is to incorporate more organic sounds into my music and affecting them from there. And it's just such an inspiring well of, sounds for experimentation. So those are some of the monkeys. Why don't we move to the breaths and whispers?
You made me like monkeys now from what you said.
Listen, I'm a very convincing woman.
You are. She is.
So this is Breathing Patterns 1. I'm a huge fan of this category. I think it's incredibly useful for any producer, creator.
And if you double speed those, Steph, what happens?
Let's see what happens when we double speed them. Chaos. I love it. I love how percussive this whole category is. I mean, you could replace hi-hats, you could replace snares, you can do so much with these breathing patterns. So we can move on to 2. This is still double time. We're going to go back to... loads of patterns. There are just 5 banks of patterns for breathing. And this is obviously, it has to be said, a very trendy thing that a lot of vocalists are doing now and yearning for, because just breath in music, not always in a literal sense, but oftentimes in a literal sense, is something that we're all striving to get more of in our music.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of slowing it down and creating these wonderful textures from it too, but also just using it as its own percussion section. Some of breathing 4. And then here's some of breathing 5.
I only passed out 20 times while recording each of these.
I'm a big fan of breathing 5.
Yeah.
I love that you morphed your mouth to create these different vowels for breathing.
Yeah.
It's very cool, and I've never heard it.
I'm gonna say, if you've got a vocalist and, sick of breathing, buy Fever Dreams.
Buy Fever Dreams.
Save a vocalist.
Sponsor a vocalist to buy Fever Dreams.
Nobody wants to do 50 measures of rhythmic breathing.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Moving on to the human hi-hat. One woman hi-hat.
Exactly.
Strobe lights. I'm having acid flashbacks already.
Great.
What I really like about the rhythmic modules that you have that are contained within each instrument is that I feel like you were really thinking about composers.
Oh, yeah.
And you were trying to offer as much diversity in, you have syncopated, you have triplets, you have just so many subdivisions of these rhythmic ideas. So regardless of what maybe the piece of music that you're writing is, there's something in Fever Dreams for all of that, or you use Fever Dreams as a launching off point.
Sure. And I thought, making sure every instrument pretty much that in this section where you could hold down multiple keys and it'll all sync up. They make these, these rhythms that might syncopate or do different things. You could hold down a bunch of keys and it starts a track for you.
Yeah. Whispers of Love A. Tell me about the Whispers of Love.
These are they're PG-13.
Yeah.
Use these responsibly.
And then we have Whispers of Love B. Love that.
So then we've got the combo, which is the call and response of A and B.
So what is it, conical?
Well, this patch it's kind of an homage to Hindustani bol and Carnatic Konakal music of India. I'm not trained in Konakal or bol. This is just my love of Bollywood and my interpretation and my love of Hindustani and Carnatic music. So, yeah, my homage to that.
That is probably one of the most unique patches I've ever heard in any sample library. I really adore it, and I love that you had this inspiration culturally for it. I think it's a really useful and cool patch.
Yeah, I'm really hoping somebody does a full Konakal library one day with, trained actual Konakal singers and bol singers. But hopefully this will suffice in the meantime. I'm sure it'll happen soon.
Okay, so we're going to move to the sustained and tremolo patches. This is I. For this patch, I like to just increase the attack, so it's... We have some blubbers. It's a really cool textural effect.
Yeah, I performed that in Hello Kitty Island Adventure for Phil Boucher.
I can see it.
Turned it into a patch.
This is Brouwer. So we have a category of erratic trims, or a subcategory rather, and you have different vowels for each of these, which is incredibly useful.
They get really intense when the intensity goes up. gentle to really brutal.
Yeah, I love the range of it. I think it's very cool. It has this wildness about it, but when it's at that lower intensity level, it's almost just like a pad that's alive, you know, this like light sort of texture on top of everything. And then this is E. Then we have A. And like I said, playing with the attack, so less of a harsh attack too. And then moving to ooh.
And everybody's favorite is
Here we go. We got the hums, erotic trim hums. Martian.
This is Meow Wow.
Mother Earth Calls, one of my favorites. My absolute favorites.
It's very soothing.
It is indeed.
Where to spa?
Or. Is this your seal patch? Just as a note to whomever is editing this, you can cut out the bullshit that we're saying in between. Outer space.
You might not even know that's a person.
I wouldn't. Overtone ensemble.
I added that patch because I usually add a drone of overtone singing on everybody's scores. And it's one of those things where if I ask, like, do you want this? You might say, I don't know.
Yeah, it might not be appropriate.
Right. But then if you just put that in the background of something, it adds this whole other quality to it.
Agreed. Yeah, I always find that overtone singing to be really useful.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Ping.
Just a silly patch for fun.
And then you have pretty standard,
Standard
sustained vowel sounds.
Yeah. Everybody needs a vowel sometimes.
You need to buy a vowel constantly.
Mm-hmm. Nice chord. That's really good. Yeah, these have a little more bite than your usual
Agreed.
vocal library.
I think it's always nice to throw in a little bit of pitch bend wherever we can.
Queen.
Wherever we can.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Waba and Yoko.
Just recreating the noise that Yoko Ono made when she was on stage with Chuck Berry.
And it's finally immortalized in the sample library.
Yikes.
Moving on to chants. Here are EAs. Here's Uwa. And then if we double the speed on this guy. This is at 1.5 speed. Wumbo. Do you want to talk a little bit about why you decided to create these chants and what the lyrical component is to these chants?
Well, chants place things very regionally most of the time.
Yeah.
And most libraries are known languages or dead languages like Latin.
Sure.
But I thought, wouldn't it be great to have something that has no known origin? And so I just took a bunch of syllables, usually with open vowels, and created performances of chants in 7 different patterns each. The patterns are all the same, but each of the 3 chants are different.
And for me as a composer, what I like about the fact that it's an invented language is that oftentimes I don't just want vocals to be oohing and ahhing. I want it to have some sort of character. I want to hear consonants. But oftentimes, I don't want it to have a regional or cultural association because it might not be appropriate for whatever project it is that I'm working on. So having something that's invented, and we've done this before too, many times on scores that you have performed on, is that you would just create a language and tie syllables together that have certain influences from different parts of the world, or maybe they're ancient or something like that. And it gives it this really special flair. So being able to have that as a composer, I think, is such a useful tool. So moving on to the chants. This is chant 1, pattern 1. And can you describe what the rhythmic profile is of the pattern 1? Because it's the same for all of the chants, right?
Yes. So pattern 1 is going to be quarter notes.
And then pattern 2.
So pattern 2 will always be 8th notes. That's a dotted 8th and a 16th note.
And then that's the
That's
opposite.
the opposite.
And I want to remind everybody too that I'm keeping these pretty bone dry. So if we, on some of these chants, so chant 1, pattern 4. Is that reverse rhythm? Pattern 3.
Mm-hmm.
Pattern 5.
So it's an 8th and 2 16ths. The reverse of that. Triplets. Never know when you need a triplet.
Could always use a triplet.
Mm-hmm. So we're just going to show you pattern 2 of the other remaining chants, 2 and 3.
This is chant 3.
Chant 3. We also have legato, synthetic legato versions of these patches. So this isn't true legato. I didn't record from note to note. But this is a way to, well, why don't I let Steph demonstrate what
Sure.
that sounds like. I've also made key switches for both the regular chants and the legato chants, just in case you wanted to play around.
So if we look at the chants, these are the key switch patches. So you have key switches available here if you prefer composing that way. And then we have chant whispers.
So these are basically, it's just 7 notes for the 7 patterns, and I whispered all 7 patterns of each chant.
Amazing. And moving to the final category, hums, which are always so useful. Round, mellow, but you really get that humanistic element to it. A major second hum. And speed also works with these, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
That's fascinating.
That's right.
Really cool. And the minor second version of that. Hum that. Humbu. And Hum-Bum.
Our last patch.
So now that we've seen most of the patches of Fever Dreams, something that you did, which is really wonderful, is that you curated some snapshots, which if you are not familiar with snapshots in Contact, you can come over to this little pull-down, drop-down menu. And down here are a couple of patches that you thought would be cool to mix together.
Mm-hmm. And
they have some of the best names that I've ever seen. Let's check out the Clicking Pseudo Conical. And I'm going to just experiment with the crossfade a little bit. I love how those go together. That's a really fun one. And then let's try out Monkey Nucleosis.
Yes,
to any Hey Arnold fans.
Hey Arnold fans.
That's a fun one.
I feel like I'm at the circus.
Birds of Paradise. I adore you. So you have your ooh vowel on the right, that rain ritual on the left. And then let's try out one more. Which one do you want to try out, Ari?
What's Ominous Beats? I don't remember making this. Like, I'm curious.
Let's try Ominous Beats. I love that. And I have to say, for the most part, for this walkthrough, because I'm a total noob at walkthroughs, I'm so sorry for everybody who is actually sitting through and watching this. However, you know, I'm keeping things at like hot intensities. I'm not really moving around the attack or the release that much. This is so editable. It's really wonderful. And all of these patches operate in really nuanced ways. So please don't be afraid to mess with these things. Obviously, every artist should harness every tool that they have to the way that they feel is the most musical. So obviously, we wanted to show you some of those patches because we found them to be very cool. And now we're going to pivot and talk a little bit about a demo that I wrote using Fever Dreams. Okay, so let's see Fever Dreams in action now that you've heard some of the patches demonstrated. This is a demo that I wrote mostly just using Fever Dreams. As you can see, all of these MIDI tracks are programmed instruments from Fever Dreams. I have very few additional things going on in this track. There's a little bit of bass, there's a little bit of kick, and then there's some pads. But I'm going to play you this demo as the full mix, and then we're going to isolate some of the tracks to hear how some of these sounds are interacting with one another.
love that demo so much, Steph.
Well, thank you for letting me use your instrument to write it. So I'm just going to isolate the Fever Dreams only sounds and show you a little bit about what that's like. So this is one of the favorite things that I think I created for this, which is using the whoops and shouts patch. But as you can see, I've just very crudely pitched it down, just using Contact. I mean, you could use whatever you want. You could use any sort of pitch adjustment software. But now it becomes this like strange bass. And because of the human element of this sound, you hear the connections, you hear the glisses, you hear like the guttural nature of the voice, but it kind of just sounds like a bass. So don't be afraid to really experiment with some of these sounds. While they are really fantastic, just right out of the box, you can apply so many different experimental techniques to it, and the opportunities for just great musicality become totally endless. So these sounds that I'm using at the moment, while you can't see my mixer, I'm basically using very simple plugins. I'm using a little bit of slapback, a little bit of echo on some things. I'm just using just a little bit of EQ here and there, depending on the sound, a little bit of panning. But other than that, I'm not really affecting the sound too much other than kind of playing around with pitch here. I've played around with this library using multiple different plugins with multi-effects, and the results are really, really phenomenal. It's just dimensions and dimensions of cool stuff. So I encourage everybody to not only just use how wonderful this is right out of the box, but also play around with other things and see what other permutations of things you can come up with. So with that cool bass, we have some of the clicking rhythms. So it just kind of sounds like a ticker with it. Here's some more clicking. And then some of the rainforest sounds as well. Then in the breaths and whispers, if I open up my window as well, you can see that I'm often layering these sounds too. And for example, with the breathing patterns, this is breathing patterns. I'm using both the breathing 4 patterns and the pseudoconical for this, and I really like the relationship between the two of them. And obviously I have that voice blend in there as well. So you can hear, for example, if I... And then if I come and crossfade it back. So you can get some really great voice blend options with this. And like you can see, I'm layering it in so many different ways. So you can really harness this in a unique way, both percussively or with these timbral elements as well. I use some Martian sounds in here. I kind of use it as a pad. And I'm spinning it around. And it just gives this bubbly effect, which I think is quite fun. It gives it a life. Now I'm using several, for harmonic elements and chords, I'm using several patches together. In this moment, I'm using those Mother Earth calls that we spoke about earlier. And then later, I'm layering some of the vowels with the wah-wahs and the or-ors. And I love saying those words out loud, frankly. And possibly one of my favorite parts of this demo, and I'm not tooting my own horn, it's because the instruments are so cool. I love the idea of going from something harmonic to going to stripping it back and going to something bare bones percussive. So we have these chants going on here, right? And then So really playing around with the relationships between creating something that has a wide scope and that has a great lush sort of roundness, and then going to something percussive and layering in chants with that. I mean, the possibilities really truly are endless. And I have to say, this demo didn't take me very long to write because of how inspiring this is right out of the box. The user interface is so functional and so easy to use from beginners to professionals. And I like that there's a simplicity to it, because it offers you exactly what you need and then leaves you room to adjust how you want to. I'm the kind of composer that really likes to get into things and get under the hood. And I love that I have the opportunity to do it with this instrument. But it's also a launching off point to something more unusual, right? So like pitching things down and just creating something different. So please check out Fever Dreams. I really can't recommend it enough. I feel like I have an Ari Mason in a box and at my fingertips, and it's the most beautiful gift truly ever. Ari is one of the most wonderful collaborators that I ever could have wished in my life, and a great friend. And I feel lucky. I feel lucky that I get to work with you. And now truly everyone is lucky because they have the opportunity to just have you there. You are such an inspiring artist, and we're all really happy that Fever Dreams exists.
So kind. Thank you so much, Steph. You are my favorite collaborator.
Don't say that to them.
I know, oops.
Future collaborators.
Thank you so much for watching the walkthrough. Please follow Fever Audio on social media and share when you use Fever Dreams in your music. I can't wait to hear it.